بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والدعوة إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير وحث على تمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسول الله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum to everybody. Thank you for coming. Obviously, I didn't expect to have another story here to kind of share with you, but subhanAllah, again, it highlights the issue at hand. So this is on the 8th of November, which is Friday, right? This Friday. Yes? No? Are we awake?
Yeah.
Awake. Is that yes to the answer? Are you awake? Or yes to the question, answering the question that it was Friday?
It was Friday.
It was Friday. Friday, there we go. 8th November. Men guilty of distributing terror material. This Friday. Wasn't really expecting anything, but there we go. Not a week goes by unless unless something like this comes up. How many of you came across this story? Nobody. Bismillah. Men guilty of distributing terror material. Last Friday. Bismillah. Zakaria, read.
2 men are being convicted of distributing terrorism material in support of Islamic State. Sean Farouk, 19, from Saltby in Birmingham, had a phone, laptop, tablet, and iPad containing extremist material and images which he intended to distribute to encourage terrorism, police said. He was convicted at Birmingham Crown Court for 3 counts of intentionally distributing terrorism material after previously pleaded guilty to possessing terrorism material from May to July 2022. He will be sentenced at the same court on 11th December. At the time of his arrest in August 2022, his 20-year-old friend Amir Al-Hari was also arrested at his Smethwick home on suspicion of terrorism offences related to IS. Al-Harith was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison in July for 3 counts of encouraging terrorism between April and May 2023.
So his friend got 6.5 years in prison. There you go, is it? For 3 counts of encouraging terrorism between April and May the 23rd, when he published videos on Instagram. Just publishing videos on Instagram, he got 6.5 years. So it gives you an indication that his friend probably gets somewhere around that time, which is a very long time, 6 years of a life, because you have shared certain things. Obviously, that's deserved. Alright, but just look, this is what happens. Bismillah.
The details of this case can only now be revealed after a point restrictions around his trial were lifted following Farouk's conviction, police said. Al-Harith was sentenced to 3 years for 3 charges of dissemination of terrorist publications after he transmitted videos between April and June 2022 to encourage others to commit, prepare, or instigate acts of terrorism with the material relating to IS. He was sentenced to 6.5 years for 3 counts of encouraging terrorism between April and May 2023 for publishing the videos on Instagram. He pleaded guilty in December last year to 2 counts of possessing terrorism information showing how to create explosive substances and was sentenced to 3 years and 10 months for each count. All sentences are to run concurrently. Detectives said he continued to commit offences and accessed extremist material after his arrest.
After his arrest, he's on bail and he's still looking. You think, okay, I'm going to stop now because the police are watching me. He kept on. Which shows you that he's embedded in that world. He's not going to come off it, and there's a naivety, no doubt, but there's also a level of conviction. Maybe he thought, doesn't matter, I'm going to prison, I might as well keep watching, or Mul'alim. Either way, Shaitan, waswasa alayh, and he's now going to be in prison, which you've got a family going to be affected by this now. extended family members, it affects everybody. Somebody asked me, what's the point of you putting these things up in the beginning? Here's my question. Somebody asked me, what is the point of you putting these things up in the beginning? In other words, what do these articles have to do with the class? I thought it was obvious, but obviously it's not obvious, but then I'm going to see, is it less obvious to you guys? So there's a microphone somewhere around, there's a second microphone. Does anybody know, there's a microphone behind you. Okay. Does anybody know why? What is the connection of these news stories to the actual material in the class? The topic of the class, or the name of the class is called what?
Allah's promise.
Where's the microphone?
Allah's promise.
Louder so Adam can hear you. This Saturday.
Allah's promise.
Allah's promise. What else? The promise to preserve this religion. Hey, what does that have to do with these BBC articles? Why do I spend time? Well, I do it anyway because it's an interest of mine. Keep an eye on this stuff. But what does this have to do with the class? Where's the connection? Can anybody see a connection? If you can, raise your hands and tell me what the connection is to the class. Like he had his hand up first. Umar, right? Yes.
Because these people think they're preserving religion in their own way, but it's not the correct way. Preserving religion.
Alright. Anything else? Yeah, I agree. Girls, anything? Sophia? The microphone is behind you. Or behind them. You're right. Umar's right.
Is it like the dangers of not following
The dangers of not following a school of thought. That's more precise. Yes. Yes. You're going to argue, well, Zane, you don't know these guys, but, how do you know that? Well, my experience tells me from working with similar individuals that they don't really follow a particular school of thought. And topics like innovation, they have a very unique, very specific, rigid, very intolerant understanding of innovation. So that's the connection. That's the connection. And the brother who asked me isn't here tonight. He's not here to hear the answer. But inshallah, if he turns up today, I can ask you guys to tell him what the connection is. Inshallah. But that's the connection. It's all connected. It's all connected. I mean, the two things are not separate. Right? These guys, like the guy last week in Algeria who went and slit this woman's, the Swedish tourist's throat, and other people that we spoke about, they all have something in common. That they have massively they've taken a massively distorted understanding of Islam that I would argue is not that far from you guys. It isn't that far. Right? You may disagree with that, but I think over time you will see that the precursors to actions like this are already embedded in minds here and there. Repeat that again. The precursor to action like this is already in the minds of some Muslims. I won't say many, but I will say a sufficient amount that worries me. And you may disagree with that. And you're welcome to disagree with that. Experience and what I'm seeing would say that I'm right. I hope I'm wrong. I don't know how. Anyway, inshallah. Is that understood? I hope that we don't see stuff like this being breaking news in the BBC in which someone has actually got through and actually done something. I don't want to be the one that says, I told you so. Especially in this, because my family and your family then are fair game for the far right and so on and so forth, which is nobody wants to be in that position. But if it does happen, it wouldn't surprise me. That's a sad thing to say. على كل حال, bismillah. This is where we're at today. we didn't get through everything last week. So, inshallah, we're going to briefly go over what we did last week. And then we'll get to the point where we stopped. And then we'll continue then. So just bear with me, inshallah. We're going to look at, inshallah, what we did last week. So we spoke about Allah's promise. The idea that Islam has been preserved, the Qur'an has been preserved, the Hadith have also been preserved. But more importantly, and more miraculously, more of a miracle, that the correct understanding of both sources has also been preserved. And the methodology of how to interpret the Qur'an and the Sunnah has also been preserved. With the massive challenges that the ulama had, that's a miracle. And Sheikh Yusuf al-Nabahani actually mentions that that's a miracle. He calls it from the alamat al-nabuwa, the signs of prophecy, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala paid very particular attention to this religion in a way that the way it's been preserved is extraordinary. And even Orientalists, people who aren't Muslim, that study Islam, even they are forced to admit that fact. But the idea that the correct methodology is based on the vast majority of scholars, and the vast majority of scholars have followed the four schools. Could somebody come along and say the idea that the majority is a source of authority? That rhymes, eh? The idea that the majority is a source of authority. Can somebody challenge that Islamically? I.e., can someone turn around and say, well, the majority can all be wrong and a minority can be right throughout history? Completely. I mean, everyone's wrong and this small group can be right. Is that something that our faith, can you see that happening in our faith? Is that a possibility? Everybody is wrong apart from this majority or these particular individual scholars. Yes or no?
No.
No, but why? Not you, somebody else. Why? You guys, why? Remind me your name?
Abdullah.
Abdullah.
Rule number one is generating fact about power in numbers, and the second thing is also Allah's promise.
Okay, that one, that's what I'm looking for. Allah's promise. So what? And what?
Allah's promise of preserving Islam and
But somebody can say, and you need to critically think, somebody can say, well, that small minority, Allah's preserved the religion with them.
In the previous lectures, I don't remember the exact thing, but was it not it said somewhere that Allah had said that the vast majority of scholars for the vast majority of time that is lost.
Not in those particular words, but you're close. Okay.
That's what's correct. Yeah.
All right. Again, critically thinking. If 90% of this ummah were wrong in the way they've interpreted Islam, and when I say 90%, I don't mean the general people, I mean the ulama. If they've all been wrong, and a very small minority have been right, all right, it means that Allah's promise to preserve the deen has not been fulfilled. Because all of them are wrong. And these group of people, very small group of people, are right. And we're not talking about we're talking about great scholars of Islam, household names that the average Muslim would know. Like, who has heard of Imam al-Nawawi? Hands up. Imam al-Nawawi. Who's heard of Imam al-Shafi'i? Hands up. Who's heard? So these are household names. All of these are wrong. And so-and-so and so-and-so are right. It would mean that for hundreds and hundreds of years, all these ulama, east and west, got it all wrong. Logically, just put logic in our heads, that wouldn't make any sense. It would make more sense that the minority got it wrong, or had an interpretation that wasn't the majority's interpretation, let's put it that way, and the majority got it right. Like, where's your proof for that? Well, this is very important. Surely we have revealed the remembrance, and surely we shall preserve it. Scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud. Al-ulama warathat al-anbiya. The scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. So if these scholars, the vast majority of scholars, all got it wrong, what were they inheriting? The other thing, and this will make more sense next week, is that throughout Islamic history, there's been different sects of Islam. And if we're going to throw the majority under the bus and say the minority can be right, then what happens is that you've got different sects of Islam that are not orthodox, that the majority have deemed to be deviant. They then can say, we have an authority, we're right. You see that point? Right? But more specifically, and the other thing is that كنتم خير الأمة أخرجت للناس. You are the best of nations brought out to people. So Allah described this ummah as what? The best. And the majority are good. A minority are not that good. So not everyone's great. Mistakes are made by certain people, but the majority of Allah says khair. If that verse, if we're going to use that verse to say Allah's praised the ummah and khairul ummah ukhrijat lin-nas, then if the majority of them were wrong, why would Allah praise them by saying khairul ummah? I repeat it. If Allah praised this ummah and says khairul ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas, the best of nations brought out to people, if the vast majority of that nation followed the wrong understanding of Islam, why would Allah praise it and say they're the best? Do you understand my point? Tamam. Sulaiman's got it. Alhamdulillah. طيب. Here's hadith. Bismillah. Zakaria.
My ummah, the scholars will not come to agree about manifest.
Why did I put ummah in Arabic in brackets? That's not part of the hadith. That's how I put it. The hadith has a very particular font and a colour, and my words are in brackets. I do that to make it clear, but the bits in brackets, that they're my words, and I put it in brackets. The Prophet didn't say that, but I'm just giving you what the ulama have said. Arguably, I can make another line underneath, but Bismillah.
Will not come to agree about manifest error or misguidance. The hand of God is with the majority, so follow the Sawd al-Adhan, the greatest number, Hakim
Mustadrak, aywa.
My ummah would never agree on manifest error or misguidance, so if you see differences of opinion, stick with the Sawd al-Adhan.
So there we have hadith that supports Abdullah's point. Remember these points. And make a note. Just keep it on your phone. Massively important. And again, at the end of tonight's class, I'm going to circle back to this point. Because you're going to ask me a question, and I'm going to say the answer is this. And we'll circle back to the answer at the end. Anyway, bismillah. They're the key points. Allah's promise to preserve the deen. It's been achieved through scholars. The majority of scholars will never agree on manifest error. If there are differences of opinion or disputes in methodology, we follow the majority of scholars, the four madhabs. These are key points. Do not forget these points. These points will help you in times of difficulty. They will clarify things. There'll be people around you who they won't have these points. They'll spend and they'll waste a lot of years in the dark. Whereas you've been given this, you just move on with your life and move on to more important things, which is being closer to Allah Azza wa Jalla. Bismillah. All right. Now we mentioned this last week. All right. Last week's topic was about bid'ah. Okay? And that was the question. Zakaria.
How has the concept of bid'ah, new religious practices, been understood by the vast majority of scholars for the vast majority of our history? Is bid'ah all bad, or can there be good religious practices that can be introduced into Islam?
And the rationale for looking at this particular topic through the majority is has already been explained to you. Has it not, Abdullah? Why? And therefore, if the vast majority in Sunni Islam have followed a particular madhab, then it makes sense that we look at it through the lens of the schools of thought. Alright, then we group thinking exercise. Is the issue of fiqh or aqeedah? We mentioned last week. What did we say?
Both.
It can be both. Depending on the issue of bid'ah, bid'ah can either be a bid'ah in belief, like Karim asked me last week, certain sects have certain beliefs, they take them outside of Sunni Islam, but still within Islam. More about that next week. But depending where the innovation is, if it's in belief or in actions. For tonight's class, it's in actions, a'mal, works, and therefore that comes under the remit of the four schools. You understand that? Nothing new tonight so far. Alright, here's the overview. The vast majority. Iqra.
The vast majority of the scholars of this ummah, namely the scholars of the Hanafi school, Maliki, Shafi, and the Hanbali school, reached an agreement that bid'ah can be good and bad. That is the standard agreed upon position in all four schools, as shown in their authoritative books, and has been the understanding for centuries.
That's a fact. That is demonstrably true. And anybody who says otherwise, the onus is on them to provide the proofs. We'll have questions at the end. At the end, inshallah. Remind us.
Small question.
Small or big, write them down and we'll answer at the end. The question now somebody may ask is, hey, show me where it says that in the books. I have no problem with doing that. I forgot to bring a book today. Bring it. Anyway. But my question I would ask is that, what are the authoritative books in the schools? You want the authoritative position in the Shafi'i school. Do you know which book is the authoritative book in the Shafi'i school? Do you know which book in the Hanafi school is the most authoritative? Or a authoritative text? So before you ask that question, right, tell me which book is the most authoritative. If you don't know that, go away and learn that first, then come back, ask me, and I'll give it to you. How am I going to give you something you don't understand? You see. And there's a difference between following Imam Abu Hanifa, mashallah alayh, and following the Hanafi school. There's a difference. Is there not? Should I ask Sophia? Is there a difference between following Imam Abu Hanifa, mashallah, and following the Hanafi school? Is there a difference? And what is that difference? That's an important point that many people don't understand. Listen, what's the difference? Is there a difference? And you got the microphone, great.
It's just like in the we can keep doing the same things.
So, and mashallah, he's a mujtahid. So if I say I'm following Imam Abu Hanifa, I'm following a mujtahid. Mashallah. But if I'm saying I am following the Hanafi school, I'm following hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of scholars, alright, their opinion. And a lot of students, a lot of people don't know that difference. That's a big difference. It's a massive difference. Right? Bismillah. Anyway, further classification. The agreement within the four schools went further, and bid'ah can be broken out into 5. What are they? Zakaria?
Obligatory innovation, which is wajib, recommended innovation, mandub, permissible innovation, mubah, offensive innovation, makruh, and forbidden innovation, which is haram.
And that classification, the 4 schools, not the 4 imams, the 4 schools adopted them. Why? Because that classification, that theory of classifying bid'ah into 5 came out several centuries later, that theory. The madhahib accepted that and absorbed it into their books. I've seen that myself. Anyway, in the to be transparent, and this is something else, that we live in an age where people are going to present one particular view as the exclusive view, the only view. And not only that, it's the view of the Sahaba and the Muslims and the Prophet, and present that view and nothing else. And everything else outside of that view is harmful, is deviant, and should be warned against. That's the age you live in. But anyway, in the interests of transparency and being, as Kareem mentioned last week, we're being objective. What does subjective mean? Being subjective.
Thinking with feelings.
Aywa. We don't want subjectivity, we want objectivity. Alright? In the interests of being objective, this is what we find. Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Shatibi, within the classical age, these are two very famous scholars of the classical age, because we're focusing on the classical age, who had a view that differed with the vast majority. And they had proofs for that position. They're scholars. Those proofs may not have been acceptable to the majority, but they have the ijtihad. Alright? They have the ijtihad. عليهم رحمة الله أجمعين. May Allah have mercy upon them all. But in the interest again, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Shatibi, Ibn Taymiyyah alayhi rahmatullah is the 661, and Imam Shatibi is just after him, 770. Are they from the Salaf in terms of generations? Are they from the first three generations? Clearly not. Why? Because they're born several centuries later. It's a fact. Some people don't know that. But anyway, it's a fact. Bismillah. So, are you read this?
Those who are against the classification agreed by the four schools are in reality unbeknown to them, following a small minority of scholars. They are told that their opinion is the only valid one, and it is the way of the Prophet, the Sahaba, and the early Muslims, the Salaf. They may never have been taught that the vast majority of the Salaf have said otherwise. This has led division, arguments, and suddenly people losing their lives. Those that follow the majority's opinion are often called innovators and deviants who you must not listen to.
Don't go to that class. He's an innovator. Have you heard that? Yes or no? Don't go. Don't listen. Don't sit with them. They're going to do A, B, and C. What kind of. Being objective. Let's look at the facts. It's all about facts. History. That's all we're looking at. And the best way to do this is to what? Look historically, from the viewpoint of the four methods. That's all we're doing. Alright, so how did the four schools, the vast majority of Sunni Orthodox scholars, come to the understand that bid'ah can be good or bad? We mentioned what? We mentioned there's two groups of hadith. One that says, don't do anything. Don't add anything. Every innovation is misguidance. Beware of newly invented matters. Yes? And then we have group two saying, well, introducing good things is permissible. Do you remember this from last week? Do you get it apart from Kareem? Anybody else remember this? This is all from last week. And we give examples. Alright? The other example is beware of matters newly begun. Because every matter newly begun is innovation, every innovation is misguidance, and every misguidance is in hell. And the other hadith, whoever innovates in this matter of ours, something that does not belong in it, this is rejected. And there's many other hadith, and there are narrations of Sahaba that say that that's in the summary that anybody that says innovation can be good, then they're a liar, or something to that nature, right? Or كما قال. All of those narrations and what the certain Sahaba have said, right, fall into the first group. Then we have a second group. Alright, here we go. Other narrations and sayings of the companions exist that indicate the same meaning. And we have the second group, which is he who introduces a good practice, and obviously he who introduces a bad practice. And we mentioned last week that, is there a contradiction? Well, no, there's not. We presented all the hadith together, then we jigsaw puzzle, we put them all in order, and that's Kareem, alhamdulillah, mentioning Kareem quite a lot today. Say mashallah, when we put the hadith in that particular order, we then begin to see that the top hadith is the how did you put it last week?
It's like an introduction to
Where's the microphone? Give him the second microphone. Zakaria, you keep that one. And keep that's for the roaming microphone.
the introduction of a book.
And the others are just like the.
Those are like the main parts of the book. So
Yes.
that one's like more of an introduction, and then that's like a warning.
And that's how all the hadith makes sense. And that's how the majority saw it. Right? Okay. Alright. How about this one? Zakaria.
Whoever innovates in this matter of ours, something that does not belong in it, this is rejected. Al-Bukhari. Question. When someone innovates something that does not belong to it,
You girls, can you see the hadith? The hadith says what? Say it, you can't speak. What's the hadith say? Yeah, but you haven't going to mind read otherwise. What is in bold or in a different font? Which part? The hadith. Does not belong in it. That does not belong in it. The question says what? You introduce something that does belong in it. The hadith says that doesn't belong in it. We're all in agreement. But if you introduce something that is in accordance with the Sharia, that does belong in it, then what? Is it rejected or not? Is it accepted or rejected? Well, the answer, the ulama say, scholars have concluded that it is not rejected, but it's part of the deen. It's as if the Prophet said, whoever innovates in this matter something that does belong to it, that it is accepted. This is a proof of the division of bid'ah. Alright, here's examples of good bid'ah, according to the majority. Listen, the hadith of Umar and Tarawih, we mentioned that. The point of this hadith is what? What's the point? The argument is that the ulama put this hadith forward, or this narration forward, to demonstrate that the Sahaba believed that innovation was good and bad. Where's the proof in that? Give Ibrahim the microphone.
What one blessed innovation this is?
What a blessed innovation this is. Who said that? Umar ibn Khattab, referring to Taraweeh, the sources in Bukhari. طيب, and what? Well, the ulama of hadith, who commentates, who tell us what these hadith mean, they have said this. First of all, the definition of bid'ah by Imam al-Shafi'i, alright, take a pause. Imam al-Shafi'i, who is from the Salaf, from the first three generations, and an authority universally accepted within Sunni Islam, and a mujtahid, mutlaq, and a scholar of the Arabic language, when he looked at this hadith, he derived certain shari'i understandings. He derived a principle in Sharia. What is that? He said this. Bismillah.
There are two kinds of introduced matters.
Muhdathat. أيوة.
One is that which contradicts the text of the Quran or the Sunnah or a report from early Muslims or the consensus ijma of the Muslims. This is an innovation of misguidance.
But
The second kind is that which in itself is good and entails no contradiction of any of these authorities. This is not blameworthy.
madmuma. So Imam al-Shafi'i, who is an authority, who understands the Arabic language and is a mujtahid, he says, based on Umar's words, we can derive certain rules. And one of those rules that bid'ah is good and bid'ah is bad. Imam al-Shafi'i, the Hujjah. By the way, that particular narration is narrated with a sound narration by Imam al-Bayhaqi in Manaqib al-Shafi'i and in this book Al-Madkhal and other people, which I may bring back at the end, who those people were. All right. Ibn Hajar Asqalani says the root meaning of innovation. Again, Ibn Hajar Asqalani, scholar called the Amir al-Hadith, one of the greatest scholars of Hadith, his commentary on that particular, his understanding of what Umar meant was that the root meaning of innovation is that which is produced without precedent. Tfaddal. Go ahead, you got the microphone, right?
The root meaning of innovation is what is produced without precedent. It is applied in the law in opposition to the Sunnah and is therefore blameworthy.
If you were to stop there, what would Ibn Hajar Asqalani be saying? If we stop there. If that's the only quote you saw online. Any of the girls like to dabble in this? If you read that, you would reach the conclusion that Ibn Hajar Asqalani would be saying what about innovation? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it all bad? What is he saying? The answer's on the wall. The words are on the wall. Huh? The writing is on the wall.
You would condemn it.
You would condemn it.
Say that was blameworthy.
Blameworthy. And someone may, online, give you that quote. I say, look, Ibn Hajar Asqalani. But, ala rislika, of the ulama say, let's continue what else he said straight after.
Strictly speaking, if it is a part of what is classified as commendable by the law, then it is a good innovation. While if it is part of what is classified as blameworthy by the law, then it is blameworthy. Otherwise, it falls in the category of what is permissible, and it can be divided into the 5 known categories.
So, Ibn Hajar Asqalani. And by the way, Imam al-Nawawi, have you heard of Imam al-Nawawi? Yeah, 40 hadith, Imam al-Nawawi, great scholar. He also has a commentary on Sahih Muslim. He says something similar. I didn't have time to type it up. If you want to verify, which I hope you do, go and find out for yourselves what Imam al-Nawawi said with similar hadith. Same thing. I'm not saying anything different. Ibn Hajar Asqalani, has he taken Al-Izz ibn Abd Salam's theory or not? Al-Izz ibn Abd Salam, look, there's some things tonight, some of you might understand, some of you don't understand, but there'll be something for everybody. But this is an important topic. So just kind of put yourselves in the next gear up to understand this topic, because a lot of guys, a lot of girls, online, at home, a lot of arguments, a lot of problems, because it goes back to ignorance of this topic. He said what? And it can be divided into 5. Where did he get that from? Ibn Hajar Asqalani. Where did he get that from? Who did he get that from? He was paying attention. No. Amen. Wait for the microphone.
From the different madhahib that categorized it. So
But who?
Imam Shafi'i.
No, you got it wrong. Who? Who's the scholar? Which scholar said it can be divided into 5? Which scholar? Hands up. Who? Come on, guys. Give Shahid the microphone.
Ibn Abdul Salam.
Al-Izz bin Abd Salam. The first slide near the beginning, remember in the beginning I mentioned that Al-Izz bin Abd Salam divided innovation into 5 categories, and the 4 schools adopted them. There's proof. Ibn Hajar Asqalani is taking that and saying it can be divided into 5. In other words, he accepted Al-Izz bin Abd Salam's understanding. So there's proof. These are important things, brothers and sisters. We're going to look at Al-Izz bin Abd Salam and what other scholars have said to clarify this in more detail. But anyway, Al-Izz bin Abd Salam, Ibn Hajar Asqalani is there, 852. Alright? MashaAllah. Like compiling of the Qur'an, remember this last week? Point there is that Abu Bakr sent Umar approached Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with them all, and said, we need to compile the Qur'an. We need to put the Qur'an in a book. Abu Bakr said, how can I do something that the Prophet didn't do? What did Umar say? By Allah, it is good. Point from that is that we can do things which are good if the time necessitates it, even if the Prophet Allahumma salli alayhi wa sallam didn't do it. Time is different. And the need is there. So Bismillah. That's Umar's understanding. Very interesting, Umar is not the only one, by the way. There's many other Sahaba, as we'll find out, who had the idea, had this pragmatic, realistic understanding of the deen that wasn't just very rigid and say, well, the Prophet didn't do it, so we can't do it. If that understanding was an understanding of all the Sahaba, what would happen to the Qur'an? Some of them goes. If that was understanding, if the Sahaba had the understanding that we can't do anything the Prophet didn't do, in that situation, when the people who memorize the Qur'an are dying, the Sahaba are dying, for various reasons, and the Huffaz are dying, if we went with that particular understanding that you can't do anything the Prophet didn't do, what would happen to the Qur'an? You fought back. One of you guys, come on. You're intelligent women. What would happen to the Qur'an? Yeah, where's the microphone? Bismillah. Put it on, is it great? So we don't use your voice. I don't.
It would have been lost.
Why?
Because obviously once you do it pass away and the knowledge will not follow on. And so there's even those who do know.
But the Prophet didn't do it. How can you do something the Prophet didn't do? Are you better than the Prophet? See these arguments? They don't really hold up to scrutiny in this and many situations. Can you see my point? What's your name? Naya. Thank you very much. Bismillah. Alright. We mentioned this hadith last week. Sayyidina Bilal. Okay. Ibn Hajar Asqalani says in Fath al-Bari that the hadith shows what? Zakaria?
The hadith shows it is permissible to use personal reasoning in choosing times for acts of worship. Bilal reached his conclusion and the Prophet confirmed him therein.
What was Bilal doing? Luqman, give him the microphone. What was Bilal doing? May Allah be pleased with him.
He added at the end of the right act of the extra into it.
Say again?
He added.
Her rapper is louder than your voice, and you have the microphone. How is that possible?
He added
Maybe you can sleep. I'm just saying I can't hear him.
After wudu, he added
After wudu, he added what?
an extra.
Extra wudu?
No,
Extra what?
salah, sorry.
Huh?
Extra salah.
He prayed to rak'at. And the reward that was associated with that was what? What was the reward? The Prophet could?
He hears sandals.
Allahumma salli alayhi. Na'am. Ibn Hajar Asqalani, the commentator of the hadith, took this rule, which says what? See, you want to be on the microphone, you're going to be on it.
The hadith shows it is permissible to use personal reasoning in choosing times for acts of worship. Bilal reached this conclusion and the Prophet confirmed him therein.
So Bilal, may Allah be pleased with him, said, right, every time I break my wudu, I'm going to pray 2 rak'ahs. The Prophet didn't tell him to do that, but he used his own reasoning and took an act of worship and gave it a specific time. Ibn Hajar Asqalani is saying there's nothing wrong with doing that. Taking an act of worship and giving it a specific time. Tonight, we are studying Islam. Is that an act of worship? Yes or no? Yes. And we've appointed this particular ibadah, this act of worship. By the way, you were in an act of worship, ibadah, seeking knowledge. Yeah? It's an act of worship. And we've appointed it, we've given it an appointed time, which is what? Every Monday. So you're doing the same thing. Same with Charity Week, an act of worship, charity, giving it a specific week. So to us, that's a good innovation. No problem there. And everything else, different acts of worship, there's plenty. We don't have time to go into that. But the point is, there's the proof to that. So someone can't argue, Akhi, why are you doing Charity Week in the first semester in whatever, what Kareem, when was it?
21st of October, week 19.
2 bid'ahs in there. First bid'ah, okay, is that you're using the kuffar's calendar, bid'ah. The second bid'ah is that you were doing it at a time that the Prophet did not specify to do. Now, you're laughing, but that mindset, alright, some of you have already. And at the end of tonight, I'll prove it. The very mindset you're laughing, some of you already have it. In other views or the acts, but you don't realize it. Inshallah, if I can remember, I'll shine a light on that. Alright, hadith number 2. Bismillah, this is an important hadith. Aywa, read.
These hadith, similar to this is a hadith in Bukhari about Hubay, who asked to pray 2 rak'ahs before being executed by idolaters in Makkah, who was the first to establish the sunnah of 2 rak'ahs for those who are steadfast in going to their death.
What was your name again? Yusuf. How can I forget? Give him the microphone. Ayman, who's got the microphone? Give him back. What's going on here?
Technical innovation.
Could you put the microphone?
The technical creating innovation.
Alright, again.
Technically, they're creating innovation.
Technically, they are creating an innovation, right? You're given a ruling, a hukum. Pause that a second. Just tell me what's happening. What's going on there? Explain that to me in layman's terms. What was he doing? What was he doing, and who was he that was doing it?
Hubay is the one who's doing something that isn't done.
What was he doing?
He's bringing to a
2 rak'at.
before death.
When? Before being executed. Great. And
It was done before.
nobody did it before. The Prophet never told them to do it. So he's doing an act of worship, similar to Bilal, very different circumstances, obviously, but an act of worship, which is what? 2 rak'at, and giving it an appointed time, i.e., just before being executed. The Prophet never told them to do that, but he used his own ijtihad, or his own reasoning. Ibn Hajar Asqalani, he took from this particular rule.
These hadiths are explicit evidence that Bilal and Hubay used their own personal reasoning in choosing the times of acts of worship without any previous command or precedent from the Prophet ﷺ, other than the general demand to perform the prayer.
Alright, Bismillah, Hadith 3. Alright. Sami Allah min Hamidah, other examples of that, where Sahaba are doing things because of their conviction that it is good. They are introducing practices and sayings that they were previously told to do. And the Prophet ﷺ, and this is the point, the Prophet accepted it. The Prophet accepted. His sunnah was to accept acts, As long as they come in the general parameters of doing good. Even if he never told him to do it specifically, but you would accept it. As long as it doesn't clash with anything he did or said. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Alright. And we mentioned that the man who recited Surah Al-Ikhlas over and over again, and so on and so forth. Alright, so these are just more hadith. You'll get these slides in the next day or two, probably two. Alright. This. Alright. The Sunnah. Iqra.
The Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is his way of acting, ordering, accepting, and rejecting, and the way of his rightly guided caliphs, who followed his way of acting, ordering, accepting, and rejecting.
How many of you have understood the word Sunnah as just the practice of the Prophet? Most people, right? But it's far deeper. It's the practice of the Prophet in acting, how he acted, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, how he ordered people to do things, and the things he accepted, and the way he accepted, and the things he rejected, and the way he rejected. And the Sunnah also, because the Prophet said, follow my Sunnah, and the Sunnah of the rightly guided. Anybody? Caliphs. In what? In how they act, ordered and accepted and rejected. That's a very broad understanding of Sunnah that I want you to etch, to burn in your minds. Alright, inshallah. That's Sunnah. And we've learned tonight that the Prophet's Sunnah was to accept practices that he never told them to do, as long as they come under the general parameters of the Sharia. Has that been proven to you? Yes or no? Louder?
Yes.
Like, girls have not been convinced? Yes or no? So practices that are nearly begun must be examined in light of the Sunnah, the way of the Prophet and his way of passing acceptance and rejection. Like, however, what does the Hadith say? Zakaria.
Every innovation which is a generalization. How do you respond to this?
What does that mean? The Hadith says every innovation, kullu. That is a statement, which is a general statement. Every. How do we respond? Because somebody may come along and say, well, hang on a minute. Didn't your Prophet Allahumma salli ala Muhammad say every? Does that not present us with an argument that needs to be addressed? Yes, it does. Ayah, Bismillah.
There are many generalities in the Qur'an and Sunnah, with each of which allows for exceptions to the rule of all inclusiveness. Kull in Arabic may mean most or very many, and not necessarily all without exception.
Who can explain that to me? One of you girls. Not Sophia. Tell me what you see. Just explain it. Alright, switch it on. Put it right by your mouth.
It's basically saying that you need to have a bit more of an understanding of the language, because if someone reads that hadith, they might judge it as all without exception.
And what's wrong with it? It says all, doesn't it?
But if you look at all the hadith that we've looked at, there's like contradictions.
Not contradictions. Not contradictions, but apparent contradictions, because the Prophet never contradicted himself. You make it too complicated, just tell me what's here. You're right, everything you're saying is right. I'm trying to make it more simple than that. The Prophet said every. Does every mean every?
Not always.
Why?
Because
One.
it is that argument.
Like. So every can also mean what?
It can be most or very many.
Alright, generalities in the Qur'an, the Sunnah, that have exceptions. So there's general statements, verses, but they have a specific meaning. But how do you know that? Well, you are not an alim. You follow the ulama. You follow the madhabs. I don't tell you what's what. So what are the examples? A man can have nothing except what he strives for. What you have on Yawm al-Qiyamah, the reward you have, is based on what you did in this world. If we didn't do, you can't gain any reward for something, and you can't benefit from something you didn't do. That's what the verse says. The reality is different. Why? Muslims,
Muslims benefit from the spiritual works of others. For example, from his fellow Muslims, the prayer of angels for him, the funeral prayer over him, charity given by others in his name, and the supplications of believers for him.
All of which the believer can benefit from, despite the verse being in a very general sense. There's an example. And there's many other examples we mentioned last week. Verily you and what you worship apart from Allah are the fuel of hell. Do you remember this example from last week? Do you remember? Ibrahim, explain it to us. Allah saying to the Nasara, you and what you worship other than Allah are the fuel of hell, are going to be the fuel of hell. Who were they worshipping? And who else? Come on, man. Who were they worshipping? Granted, I did this very quickly last week, but that's why I'm doing it now.
This is for Christians as well.
They were worshipping who?
Isa.
And his?
And his.
Disciple.
No.
Mary.
Mary. So, if that verse is to be taken literally, what would it mean for Jesus and Mary, who they worshipped? What would that mean, that verse, if you take it literally? I can see it's on your lips. Good. And there's the answer as well. Give it a microphone. I forgot what I just said. What did I say?
He said, if you take it literally, what would that mean for Jesus and Mary?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's obviously wrong. But the verse literally would indicate that. Yes or no? But it's wrong, obviously. So there we have a general verse, but understood as it has a specific meaning, although it's general. Good. You girls help her out, just here by yourself. Help her out. Alright, those examples?
No one who prays before sunrise and before sunset will enter hell. Someone who prays the dawn and mid-afternoon prayers and neglects all of the prayers and obligatory works is certainly not meant. Destroying.
Like Abdullah. So that hadith, someone who prays before sunrise, Fajr. And someone who prays before sunrise and before sunset, that's Asr. Fajr and Asr. If you pray Fajr and you pray Asr, you won't come into hell. Someone will come along and say, well, you know what, SubhanAllah, on this Dhuhr, and this Maghrib, and this Isha. Because the hadith says it, right? That's, if I do those prayers, I'm going to heaven. That's a general hadith, but has a specific meaning. You understand that? You can't take it literally. Yes or no? You don't look convinced.
I am confused.
And that's why I asked.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking. Right? Read it again.
No one who prays.
No, let him read. Let him read.
No one who prays before sunrise.
That's Fajr. Start the Fajr. Anyone?
Fajr and
Before sunset, Asr.
Will enter hell.
You pray those two prayers, you're good to go to heaven, not hell. So if someone just does those prayers and nothing else, is he going to go to heaven?
According to the Hadith.
And according to the ulama who look at everything else, in the wider sense, obviously not. Praying those two prayers is not sufficient. That's the point. Like, we'll move on. Okay, read.
The use of the word every in the Hadith does not indicate an absolute generalization. There are many examples of similar generalizations in the Qur'an and Sunnah that are not applicable without restriction.
This is an interesting verse of the Qur'an. What does it say?
The
What's the verse of Qur'an say?
The food of Ahl Kitab is lawful for you.
Who are the Ahl Kitab? Girls. The book, the people of the book, who are they? Don't steal her thunder. Bismillah.
Is it the Christians and the Jews?
Right, Jews and the Christians, or whatever which way you want to say it. Christians and Jews, good. Well, take the microphone. What's your name?
Amina.
Amina. Where's the other Amina? Amira, where's Amira? Not here. Is she okay? But she's listening to the recording, she's heard us asking about it. Amina. That verse says what?
The food is lawful.
The food of who? The Jews and the Christians is what for us?
Yeah.
Halal. Right. Do they drink alcohol?
Yeah.
Can I drink alcohol?
No.
But the verse says it though. Do they eat pork?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
But that's their food, right? The verses I can eat. Says in the Qur'an. But it's wrong, right? Yeah. Again, a general verse is general, but there's specific meanings. There's a context. Although it's general, it's understood in a specific context, a specific meaning. You get my point? And the same thing about the hadith, every innovation, it has a specific context. That's my point. Right, let's move on. Alright, we did this last week, and we'll do it again this week. Interesting exercise. Can you think of a good innovation that we are doing in our time, that came about in our time? Right, hands up. Yusuf.
I said last some speakers.
Give him the microphone. You mentioned speakers last week, didn't you? Give him another one, man. Come on, man. Come on. Another one. He doesn't think I'm going to let you get off by saying the same thing you said last week.
Oh yeah, schools.
Stalls.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll explain a bit more.
Islamophobia, Islamophobia.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Anything else? Not useful, yeah. Ibrahim, give him the microphone. Go ahead. Oh, you got. Okay, go on.
Recorded lectures.
Oh, okay. Recording lectures, girls. Good innovations that are done in our time. Amina.
Green growth, like possible estimate.
That was done way before. You're right. No, it's like I wouldn't even call that a good innovation either. It's something that was done. It's practice. It's proof for it. But something in our lifetime. You are right, by the way, and that's a good thing to do. But I'm talking about in our lifetime. Think to think. Boys, Shahid.
Monday and Wednesday night classes.
Oh, okay. Monday and Wednesday night class. Come on, just get your thinking caps on. Bismillah. Abdullah.
It's more of a question.
No. Question at the end.
Okay, I can say an example then. Anything related to like medical advancements, would you say that's a
In religion.
bit
In religion. Keep it within,
yeah.
outside of religion. But within religion.
Okay. That was the answer to my question.
Oh, very clever, that, isn't it? Very clever. You got me there. You got me. Shahid. Ibrahim.
The color-coded Qur'an.
Oh, color-coded Qur'an. Very nice. Ibrahim.
There's scrolls that you can read when you use a pen to read it out with it.
There we go. Girls, anything? Good innovations. Reading the Qur'an on your phone. Anything else from the girls? Good innovations. One at a time. Aywa. Online Qur'an and Islamic classes. Yeah, the classes could fall into other categories a bit, but you're right, yeah. Ayman.
It's kind of copying the Qur'an, but using Braille to
That's a different one. Using Braille. Excellent. Anything else? I'll come back to you girls if you think of anything. Luqman.
Virtual reality hajj.
Virtual reality Hajj. I don't know what to say. Okay, fair. Ayman. I don't know what to say about that.
Hajj Roblox.
Okay, let's keep it real.
Electric primers.
Electric prayer mats.
You know the one where it tells you what to do with that.
I haven't seen that. What's that about?
I think they were giving one out on the charity week as well.
How does that work?
It just tells you what to do while you're playing.
That
Yeah.
was for like reverb.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sick.
Oh yeah,
Send me the link on my WhatsApp. I want to see that. Anything else? Anyone? Ice socks? Anyone? Obviously.
Have Qur'an apps.
How does that work?
There's like certain Qur'an apps you can memorize Qur'an with.
Oh, fair enough. Naam. Right.
Microphones in the mosque.
Microphones in the mosque. Anyone? Ibrahim.
It's like this framework for all people in the masjid where they can fold it up and stick it instead.
Okay, there we go. And if you think, there's a whole bunch of good innovations. Anybody want more? Abdullah?
Azan reminders, like apps and such which remind you about Azan.
Excellent, yeah. The apps that remind you of Adhan. And the apps that tell you what time the prayer is. They're all good innovations. And the prayer timetables and all. Good innovations. The Prophet never did it, the Sahaba never did it. And they give you... You want one more? No questions, because I asked. It's not for equal opportunities and all that. Abdullah would go to HR, complain against me, and I'm not equal opportunities, I'm just, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So, questions up here.
Finding the direction of Qibla.
Anyone, finding the direction of the house. By the stars, application, alhamdulillah. These are all good innovations. I'm going to give you a massive one. A massive one. What are the pillars of Islam? What are they? Shahada, one. Salah. Zakat. Pause. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and the early Muslims, and for centuries, when it came to zakah on wealth, because there's different types of zakah, as I'm sure some of you are studying, but in zakah of wealth, it was given out in gold and silver, al-dhahab wal-fidda, gold and silver. And zakah was done like that for centuries, gold and silver. Currently, you give zakah in different currencies. Pounds, sterlings, whatever else. Yes or no? Right. We have a whole pillar. A whole pillar. Huh? A whole pillar in and of itself that is done in a way that wasn't done by the Prophet ﷺ, nor the Sahaba, nor anybody for centuries. A whole pillar now done in a way that was never done before. Can you see my point? Yes or no? If you want me to repeat it, just please. I'd rather you ask me. That's a very important point. Who does not see my point here? Hands up. You all get it. A whole pillar done in an unrecognizable shape that wasn't done before. And that's why some people have said, and I disagree with this, and many ulama disagree with this, who have said that there's no more zakat. Because the Prophet has said zakat on gold and silver, not on this currency. That is not an opinion that has any authority amongst those, the real authoritative scholars of this age. But I'm just putting it out there. See what I mean? Because people want to say it's a bid'ah. I'll give you one more and then we'll move on. Did the Prophet ﷺ in his khutbahs speak in English? Did he speak in Urdu? Did he speak in other languages other than Arabic in the khutbah? It was all in Arabic, yes?
Yeah.
Well, on Friday, you heard the khutbah by Ibrahim and me in English, right? We did the whole khutbah, and the khutbah is an act of worship. We did it in English. The Prophet didn't do it that way. So that would fall into the very problematic view with certain people. But there we go. Nobody bats an eyelid. No problem with doing the khutbah in Urdu or English or Somali or whatever else. But now, there are opinions in the Hanafi school. I understand that. But outside of that, whole khutbah done in the language, how can you do something the Prophet didn't do? And I've come back to what I said before. I'll show you things that will kind of wake you up a little bit. There's another example. Anyway, Bismillah. Okay.
How do we respond to the claim that we can't do anything that the messenger did not do? The Prophet or the Sahaba didn't do it. How can you do something that they didn't do?
Hands up. How many of you have heard that statement, either online or friends, family? Hands up. Out of interest, who's never ever heard of that from anybody? Nobody. Okay. So it's a topic that is well worth looking at. How do you respond to the claim that we can't do anything the Prophet didn't do? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Those of you who are awake have already partly answered this already. Because who else from the Sahaba said, how can I do something the Prophet didn't do? Allahumma salli alayhi wa sallam. Abu Bakr, what was the situation?
Basically introduced Tarawih and Abu Bakr.
La. Back.
Sorry.
No.
Quran, the compilation of the Quran invisible.
Remember this example? Yes? Yes or no? Good. The Prophet or the Sahaba didn't do it. How can you do something they didn't do? Are you better than them? Obviously we're going to say no. But this is kind of the guys I used to work with in prison, this is a very common thing. How can you do something the Prophet didn't do? Are you better than the Prophet? The other thing with these guys, these extremists, these are the type of questions or counter-arguments they would say. So, Bismillah. The correct understanding of the Prophet not doing something. Just because the Prophet ﷺ didn't do an act, it doesn't mean that that act is haram. In other words, he left certain things. Did he not? He left certain things. What were the circumstances behind him leaving things out? That's what we're going to look at. When you're ready?
Not doing something can be several types.
So the Prophet not doing something can have several possible reasons. None of them are it is haram. So I'm going to give you examples of where the Prophet didn't do something or didn't practice something, and none of these examples are because they're haram. There are other explanations. Number one.
Out of custom or habit. Grilled lizard meat was offered to the Prophet ﷺ, and he stretched his noble hand to take some, but when he heard that it was lizard, he withdrew his hand. Asked if such meat was prohibited, he replied, no, for it is found in the land of my people, and I find it unappetizing.
Right, Bismillah. Who can explain to me that hadith of Bukhari and Muslim? What's going on? Luqman, microphone. What's going on? Explain.
So the Prophet was offered grilled lizard meat.
Grilled lizard meat. Anybody had that before? Nobody? Anybody? Huh? Not that I know of. Not knowingly and willingly.
And because it was not customary to have the specific type of meat that was offered, he withdrew his hand.
Allahumma salli alayhi.
And it was not because it was forbidden, as the Sahaba has mentioned, asked.
Because the Sahaba asked him, Ya Rasulullah, you moved your hand away. Is it haram? And he said?
And he said no, because it's not found where he is from, essentially. And
In other words, what the Prophet is saying is that I'm not used to eating this. Like, we don't eat this where I'm from. And he's a human being, unlike any other human being. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But he didn't like it. Just because he didn't eat it, does it make it haram? No, he explained, no, I don't like it. Where I'm from, we don't eat that. And the Sahaba continued eating, no problem. What is the point then? The Prophet didn't do it. But the circumstances behind him not doing it is what? Is haram? No, because he didn't like it. Right? It's not something he was used to. That's one example. Example number 2.
Forgetfulness. The Prophet ﷺ inadvertently omitted something in prayer. Asked if the prayer had changed, he said, I am only a human being and I forget just as you forget. If I forget something, remind me of it.
Ibrahim, explain to me what's going on. Ibrahim next to you. Oh, that Ibrahim. Ibrahim number 2. Ibrahim number 1 has been taken.
So, during a prayer of the Prophet ﷺ, he omitted a certain action which the Sahaba and companions were used to perform as he taught them. But now when he omitted that specific action, they wanted to ask if the prayer has changed. Is this a new prayer that we're instructed to do now? But he said no, it was out of forgetfulness.
So the point is that the Prophet didn't do something. The thing he didn't do it, did he stop doing it because it was haram? No, he just forgot. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So what we're starting to see, and I'm going to give you more examples, that the idea that the Prophet did not do something equals it is haram is not correct. I'll repeat that again. The Prophet not doing something equals haram. That's incorrect. Because there's examples where he didn't do something, and the reason why he didn't do it wasn't to do with it being haram. Give you some more examples.
Lest a new obligation be imposed upon the Ummah. For example, the fact that the Prophet ﷺ stopped praying Tarawih in congregation.
Anybody willing to explain this one? Luqman.
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, of course, he cares about his ummah, and to make sure that a obligation, meaning something has become fard on his ummah, he withdrew from participating in the Tarawih prayer.
Which every night he would come out, and then for a few nights he didn't. Why did he not come out?
Because he did not want to create a new obligation, an obligatory act upon the ummah.
Because had he kept on coming out, night after night, it would have become an obligation. So out of his shafaqah and compassion, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he didn't come for a few nights. Interesting. Lest a new obligation be imposed. Keep going.
Because the Prophet ﷺ did not give it any thought, as when he left the tree stump and began to use a pulpit, whereupon the tree stump was heard moaning until its voice was heard.
Micro students should know this one. You four here, the ex-ISOC. Look at it, explain it. Where's the microphone?
The tree, he used to do stuff with the tree, and the tree used to just be comforted by the Prophet ﷺ because he was just doing it. And then when the Prophet ﷺ did it somewhere else, the tree won't.
Why did he do it somewhere else? What did the Sahaba do? They built a member for him. Alright, a member. You have to stand up and do the khutbah. And then the tree that he was by before, crying and so on. It's a beautiful point. The point is that the idea of a pulpit, you know what a pulpit is? Okay, good. See on Jum'ah, you know what Jum'ah is, right? Were you there last Friday when I was there?
Not the last Friday, no, because I
Okay. Next time you go in the prayer room, at the front, you will see these steps. That's the pulpit. Stand on top and you talk. Obviously, you girls will see that, but that's what happens. The pulpit, that idea was given to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said he accepted that idea. Do it. Okay, that meant that the tree that he was next to, when the Prophet moved away and did the khutbah on the minbar, the pulpit, that tree actually cried. And the Sahaba heard his voice. Beautiful story for another time. The point is that the idea of doing that, it didn't occur to the Prophet until the Sahaba suggested it to him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he said, great, go ahead and do it. Same with the trenches as well.
Because what is not being done nevertheless falls under the general meaning of the verse or hadith. For example, many of the recommended acts they are comprised in the verse.
And do good that perhaps you may prosper. That opens a wide door. The verse says, do good so that you may prosper. That's the green light that Allah has given you. Do good. In any shape, way, or form, as long as it confines within the Sharia. How do we know that? You follow madhab and you're okay. But do good.
In case it affects the heart of some of his companions. The Prophet ﷺ said to Aisha, were it not for the recentness of the unbelief of your people, I would have raised the house and then rebuilt it on the foundation of Ibrahim alayhi salam, for the Quraysh fell short from rebuilding it completely.
The Kaaba, as it now stands, previously it was different. The door now is higher. Right? The Prophet ﷺ wanted to take it apart and make it as it was previously with the same parameters that Ibrahim ﷺ did. But one thing prevented him from doing it. What was it? What stopped him from taking it down and building it up? The hadith in the Bukhari, Muslim, by the way. But what prevented him? What was he afraid of?
The people who have recently become Muslim, they've been accustomed to the Kaaba being that way, so he didn't want them to dislike.
Naam! It's too much of a jump for the people at this time because they were new to Islam. And because he knew that they were new to Islam, this would be a very difficult thing. Although he's a prophet, but he knew that the nufus of these great people, this is too much for them right now. And that's why he didn't do it. So therefore we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 examples that indicate the Prophet not doing something is other than it being haram. 7 or 8 examples which indicate the Prophet leaving something, not doing something for other than the reason that we commonly think it's haram. Do you see my point? Yes or no? Quickly.
Yes.
Anybody else? Yes? Yeah. There we go. Just a minute. That's where that's taken from. Alright, here we go. The classification of bid'ah into 5. We've nearly finished, don't worry. Hey, Bismillah, read.
Sultan al-Ulama al-Izz ibn al-Islam, one of the Hafiz and also great mujtahids of Islamic history, said that innovations fall under the 5 headings of the Sharia. Obligatory, wajib, recommended, mandub, permissible, mubah, offensive, makruh, forbidden, haram. We will look at examples of this with further examples from scholars to highlight the point.
So we're going to look now at Ibn Abd Salam, who put forward the theory that, alright, bid'ah is good and bad. That was accepted for centuries. But he saw no problem in reality that bid'ah can be divided into 5 categories. And he developed this theory that a bid'ah can be an obligation. You have to do it. Or a bid'ah can be recommended. It's recommended to do it. Or a bid'ah can be permissible. Or a bid'ah can be makruh. this slide, or a bid'ah can be haram. And he developed this legal theory, and by the way, the ulama from then on in, the majority accepted his theory. Yeah, they accepted it. Ibn Hajar Asqalani, I gave you the example already. So we're going to look at Al-Izz ibn Abd Salam's classification with some other examples that other scholars have added. So here we get a more holistic, deeper view. So these are examples. Some of them are Al-Izz ibn Abd Salam, and some of them are from a particular scholar who I'll give you the name in a second. So Bismillah, here read. It's a big one. Are you ready for this one?
Innovations that are obligatory, such as recording the Qur'an and the laws of Islam in writing when it was feared that something might be lost from them. The study of the disciplines of Arabic are necessary to understand the Qur'an and Sunnah, such as grammar, word declension, and lexicography. Hadith classifications to distinguish between genuine and spurious.
Pause. Hadith now are sahih and hasan and da'if and so on and so forth. All those classifications, have you heard of these classifications? Hadith, hasan, sahih, da'if. Have you heard of these classifications before? Yes? All bid'ah. All the hadith of the Prophet are sahih. Are they not? At the time of the Prophet, if you went to Umar ibn Khattab and said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, give me a hadith that's sahih of the Prophet. He's going to look at you and say, what are you talking about? All the hadiths of the Prophet are sahih. Would he not? Because at that time, that classification had not been invented, had not been introduced, because there was no need to introduce it at that point. But afterwards, that classification had to. Do you understand my point? Does anybody want me to repeat that point?
Just explain what sahih means.
Sahih means authenticated, sorry. Barakallahu fiqh. Any words that I use that you don't understand, please put your hand up. Yeah?
You say like dev after like every.
Tayyib means okay, fine, good, great. Inshallah. Any other words? I didn't mention that today.
No, you did at the start, and that's why I put my hand up.
Tayyib, next week, the answer. Next week.
Every week I have to wait till like.
You missed that. You missed your answer 2 weeks ago, and had a whole. Did I not answer Kareem's question? And then the recording that's been recorded, I said, this is Kareem's answer to Kareem's question. I hope you listened to it. Did you listen to it?
Not yet. I listened to the first half an hour. It didn't reach to the point yet.
Tell you what, you were thought of, and your question was answered. But you weren't there, but it was recorded. Inshallah. I mentioned you by name. I continue.
And the classifications to distinguish between genuine and spurious prophetic traditions and the philosophical refutations and arguments advanced by the Mu'tazilites.
More about them next week.
And the like.
So they are innovations, things that weren't done by the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, nor the people after him, ajma'in, but after them and after them. It was an obligation to meet the requirements and the challenges of the age they lived in. Alright, unlawful innovation, bismillah.
Unlawful innovations such as non-Islamic taxes and levies, giving positions of authority in sacred law to those unfit for them, and devoting one's time to learning the beliefs of heretical sects that contravene the tenets of faith of Ahlul Sunnah.
So these are bid'ah. Some of this is Ibn Abd Salam, and some of this is Imam al-Jurdani, who we'll tell you in a second. Between them, they said non-Islamic taxes, alright, is a bid'ah. Giving positions of authority, alright, in sacred law to those unfit of them. Arguably, that's everywhere, this day and age. Also, devoting one's time to learning the beliefs of heretical sects that contravene the tenets of Ahlul Sunnah. I learning the beliefs in depth of other sects of Islam while you are unaware of your own beliefs. He says that's haram, and innovation is haram. Why is studying the beliefs of other sects, when you haven't studied your own tradition correctly, why is that a bid'ah that the ulama is haram? What could possibly go wrong? Anita. Where's the microphone? Right at the front. Give that woman a microphone. What could possibly go wrong?
You might as well believe in them.
Those views. And because you're not grounded in your own views, that's a bid'ah, it's haram. Alright? Play it. Means good. Okay. Hakada. Alright, recommended innovations, many examples here. And again, these are extras that the ulama have added. And I'm a Jordani. Hey, Bismillah.
Recommended innovations such as building hostels and schools. Hostels and schools of sacred law. Every good act that wasn't observed at the time of the early Muslim, recording the research of Islamic schools of legal thoughts, writing books on beneficial subjects, extensive research into fundamentals and particular applications of sacred law, in-depth studies of Arabic linguistics, and the reciting of words by those with a Sufi path, commemorating the birth Mawlid of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and wearing one's best and rejoicing at it.
So, Al-Izn Abd Salam, alright, some of that is from him, and some of it is from other ulama who've kind of expanded the idea. All of that are recommended innovations, things that weren't done at the time of the Prophet, which are recommended. In that you could put your Discover Islam Week, in that you could put all the examples you mentioned would all fit into there. And the ulama say that the Mawlid that everyone talks and fights about and argues online, alright, without actually looking at what the ulama have actually said, it would fall underneath a recommended innovation, a bid'ah hasanah. The Mawlid falls underneath that category. So yes, the Mawlid is a bid'ah, but what kind of bid'ah? The majority of ulama say it's a bid'ah hasanah. Right? Maybe any questions we can answer at the end. Listen to them.
Innovations that are offensive, such as embellishing mosques, decorating the Qur'an, and having a backup man loudly repeat the spoken Allahu Akbar of the Imam when the latter's voice is already clearly audible to those who are praying behind.
So these are just makruh, not haram, right? Because there's no need. Innovations that are permissible: sifting flour, using spoons. On Friday we spoke about this. Using spoons and having more enjoyable food and drink and housing. The food part, I mentioned that. One of the earliest bid'ahs was using spoons to eat. We mentioned that on Friday for those who were on Friday with me. Alright, Bismillah.
The above classifications of bid'ah types is normal in classical Sharia literature, being accepted by the four schools of Orthodox faith.
Right, and all of that is taken from the classical scholar Sheikh Muhammad Jordani in his book Jawahir al-Lu'luwiyya fi Sharh al-Arba'in al-Nawawiyya, which is a commentary on the 40 hadith of Al-Imam al-Nawawi. Yes, someone's going to say, hang on, you haven't just quoted Al-Izn Abd Salam. Yes, but I've quoted Al-Izn Abd Salam and given what ulama have said. Because online I saw, they are misquoting Al-Izn Abd Salam's classification. And therefore I've indicated, yes, and I've added, well not me, I've added other examples from Sheikh Muhammad Jordani's commentary. Alright? Just to clarify that. Anyway, listen. Okay, skip that one. Maybe skip that one as well. Alright. Here we go. Right, pause. We've mentioned, if you cast your minds back an hour and a half ago, there are two groups when it comes to the issue of bid'ah being good and bad. The majority say what? Jamhur. The Hanafis, the Malikis, the Hanbalis. What do they say? Bid'ah can be
good and bad.
And Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Shafi'i say what?
Bad.
Right. Let's call the first group, group 1, and call the second group, group 2. Are you with me? So group 1, all things that are new, but as long as they are okay within the Sharia, good bid'ah. And group 2, anything that was not done at the time of the Prophet is bad. Are you with me? Group 1, good acts. Group 2, all bad acts. Are you with me? You need that for this exercise. Alright, are you listening? Luqman, pay attention. What would the majority and the minority say about the following practices? Are you listening? Bismillah. Making a habit of always repeating Surah Al-Fatiha from Fajr until sunrise. So let's say after Fajr all the way to sunrise, you repeat Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Malik, and so on. And you repeat it all the way until sunrise. Group 1, who don't have issues with doing things the Prophet wouldn't do, that would be called what? Bid'ah Hasanah. Yes? But group 2 would say what? No, these girls. Group 2 would say what? Come on, you have to wake up. This is important here. They say it's bad. Why? Because they have no such thing as... Yeah? Right, pay attention. Repeating 40 times between the Sunnah of Fajr and the Fard of Fajr. So Fajr, you've got the Sunnah and you've got the Fard. You pray 2 rak'at, and after that you pray the 2 rak'at of Fajr. In between, you say 40 times, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, La ilaha illa ant, bi rahmatika astaghith. And the purpose why you do that is for what? For your heart to be alive. So your heart doesn't die. So what do we have here? We have an act of worship. Luqman, what is the act of worship I'm doing? La. What's the act of worship I'm doing?
You're praising.
I'm doing a particular form of dhikr. Pay attention, please, because this is going somewhere. If you don't understand it, you lose the point at the end. There's a particular dhikr. Alright? So I'm taking this dhikr, what is it? Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, at the dhikr. And I'm giving it a specific time. When am I doing it? In between the Sunnah of Fajr and Fajr. Alright? And I'm giving a specific number. How many times am I going to say it?
40 times.
40 times. And I'm going to say the benefits of it. Which is what? To keep the heart alive. None of this was told by the Prophet ﷺ, and none of it was told by the Sahaba. None of that. To give this particular dhikr, to choose a particular dhikr, and to give it a specific time, and to give it a specific number, and to give it a particular merit. None of that came from the Prophet ﷺ. But group 1, who have bid'ah hasanah, would say what? It's a good innovation. And group 2, who have no good innovations, it's all bad, would say what? It's a bad innovation. Great, you get it. Alright, this one needs a bit of explanation. Let's say there's just pay attention to me, ignore that for a second. Let's say you're reading tafsir. Alright? Tafsir is an explanation of the Qur'an, the commentary of the Qur'an. And you read several different commentaries. But you're not satisfied with the answer. You want another answer, a deeper answer. So what you do is that you go to an abandoned mosque that no one prays anymore. And you rub your face in the dirt. And you ask Allah to give you understanding of this verse that you are researching. And you say, "Oh, teacher of Ibrahim," the Prophet Ibrahim, "make me understand." Or, "Oh, teacher of Adam," Allah, and Ibrahim, the Prophet, teach me. So this individual would want an understanding of the verse he had an issue with. He hasn't found the tafsir that he wants. And he goes to a mosque that's abandoned and puts his face in the sand and rubs his face in the sand and makes his dua to Allah. Group 1 would say what?
Good brother.
Bid'ah hasana, yes?
Yes.
Group 2 would say what?
Bad.
Girls, if you here, what would it be? Group 2, bad innovation. This is my point. You're going to say, where's he going with all of this? I'm going somewhere. Alright, how about this example? Using prayer beads, you know the prayer beads, the dhikr beads, the beads, in salah, while you're praying, and to count the amount of times you recite a particular verse or a particular surah. So you've got your beads, dhikr beads, right? Who has beads with them? Dhikr beads? Anyone got beads? Here. Dhikr beads. Anybody does not know what dhikr beads are, the beads that you have, the beads, you do dhikr. Anybody, you all know what the beads are, right? Yeah. And you're in salah, and you're using those beads in salah, and you're using it to count 30 times or 40 times, you're going to recite Surah Al-Ikhlas. Qul Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. 1. Qul Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid. 2. So you're using your beads in salah, right? To count, to keep account of how many times you are reciting a particular verse or a particular surah. Group 1 would say, what kind of bid'ah is that?
Good brother.
Anybody else? Bid'ah hasana. But group 2 would say what? Huh? A bad innovation. Do you all see that? Yes? Great. Alright, Luqman, pay attention. Are you paying attention? No. Good. اقرأ لقمان. Read. Who's reading? I said Luqman عفوا. طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Hey, that's the point.
Would always repeat Surah Al-Fatiha from after Fajr or just sunrise. Al-Alam
Does anybody see a problem? Okay, what's happening? Ayman, microphone. Aywa, what's happening?
Ibn Taymiyyah
Ali rahmatullah, aywa.
is a scholar who subscribes to the minority view that bid'ah is.
However,
Or that he's doing a bid'ah.
Hasana.
Bid'ah.
And that's in that work. Al-Alam Al-Aliyya fi Manaqib Ibn Taymiyyah, written by Abu Hafs al-Bazzar, who was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah, who wrote a book about him, and he said that I spent time with him, and he would tell me to come close, and I observed him doing this dhikr, reciting the Fatiha, all the way until sunrise. Hold on a minute. Do you have anything else?
Ibn narrates that Ibn Taymiyyah said, he who repeats 40 times between the Sunnah of Fajr and the Fajr of Fajr, Yahya, Qayyum, La ilaha illa ant, bi rahmatika astaghfir. It's hard to be alive and it will not die. Just
Again, Ibn Taymiyyah, alayhi rahmatullah, picking a particular form of dhikr, mashallah, giving it a specific time, giving it a specific number, and then saying giving it a specific merit. We, the Jamhur, have no problem with that. But those people who follow Ibn Taymiyyah would have a problem with this. Would they not? How can you do dhikr at this particular time? The Prophet didn't do it, Sahaba didn't do it. Here's Ibn Taymiyyah, alayhi rahmatullah.
when Ibn Taymiyyah wanted guidance in a specific issue of tafsir, he would visit abandoned masjid for his face in the dirt and say, O teacher Ibrahim, make me understand, or O teacher Adam and Ibrahim, teach me.
Ibn Abdul Hadi is one of Ibn Taymiyyah's students. He narrates that Ibn Taymiyyah would read many books of tafsir, would not find the answer that he wanted, and then go to an abandoned mosque, rub his face in the dirt. This is not Zane talking, by the way. This is a student saying this. I'm making this dua. Which for us, there's no problem with that. It's bid'ah hasana. Do you see my point? Great.
Ibn Taymiyyah was asked, is there an issue of using prayer during prayer while reading Qur'an? He responded, if the question is about counting verses or counting a repetition of the same chapter, like Al-Ikhlas or the Subha, then there is no issue with it. Majmul Dawa.
22, 65. So here's Ibn Taymiyyah, alayhi rahmatullah, saying, yeah, you can use the beads in Salah. Right? People argue against people who use the beads outside of prayer. Right? People who follow him will criticize people for using beads outside of prayer. Here's him saying, using the beads in the prayer. And saying there's nothing wrong with it. So what do we say to people who say, Akhi, beads, bid'ah, kada wa kada tayyib, shaykh, your own shaykh. Alright? Using the beads in prayer. SubhanAllah. He's saying, okay. And you guys are, I wish they would read their books, but they don't read. They don't know what's in their own books, some of these people. Tayyib. Is that shocking or not shocking? Is that an eye-opener or not? They're all quotes from those books that are there. You go back and check. So you could argue with somebody and say, hang on, such an act, bid'ah, yes, bid'ah. Claim such an act, is it a bid'ah? Yes, it is. Such an act, is it a bid'ah? Yes, it is. Ibn Taymiyyah did that, Ibn Taymiyyah did the second, and Ibn Taymiyyah did the third. And then they're left looking at you like, because they don't even know what's in their own books. Anyway, I thought it was very useful, inshallah, for people to have. Some of you may not understand what you've just read or how important it is. It will be in the future. Keep an eye on it and keep it in the back of your head. Here's the conclusion. Bismillah. Question. Ayon?
How has the concept of bid'ah innovation been understood by the vast majority of scholars for the vast majority of history? Bid'ah is misunderstood by a great number of people today as being all bad and that there is no such thing as a good innovation. The four schools themselves are in agreement that it can be good providing that it doesn't go against the Sharia, and bad if it goes against the Sharia. The Hadith, he who institutes a good practice in Islam refers to good innovations, bid'ah hasana, whereas whoever institutes a bad practice in Islam refers to bad innovation. Hadith and others such as beware of matters newly begun, for every matter newly begun is an innovation, every innovation is misguidance, explains the idea of bad practice in more detail. It should not be read in isolation. Umar himself referred to bid'ah as being blessed, good in Hadith. And this Ibn Abdo Salam classified bid'ah into 5 categories. The leading authorities in all the 4 schools accepted this idea and introduced it into their works and book. It is something that the great scholars have agreed upon, and following it is the way of the Zawd al-Alam, the great number. Following the madhab protects you from falling into bid'ah.
Sulaiman, following a madhab protects you from falling into bid'ah. Like I said to you on Friday. I put that in there because of the conversation. You asked me a question and that's the answer, and I thought other people would benefit from the answer.
Ibn Taymiyyah and Ash'ari are notable exceptions to this, and they took a more literal interpretation. There were others after them. Their views on bid'ah have been given more popularity in this age, especially by people who have revived Ibn Taymiyyah's views and approach.
That's recommended reading. It's online. I'm going to put this book as well. I'll put it on there. This is an excellent book that I found really beneficial to give you a better understanding of what the scholars, what your tradition has actually said, and it's got full of references that are very useful to have. Right, we're going to end on this. Critical thinking. Do you all have your critical thinking hats on? No? Amira, do you have your critical thinking hat on? Is that yep or no? Great, listen. Here we go.
Why do you think that some people only teach one perspective?
Why do you think, given what we've been exposed to tonight, what we've learned, why do you think that some people only teach one particular perspective? All bid'ah is bad. I want to hear what you have to say. Give Yusuf the microphone. I would say this and the next slide, for me, is the most important slide of the class.
They might be ignorant
Alright, yeah. They could be ignorant of what? Of the other view, which is the majority view. Yep. Possible, right? They could be ignorant. So people who are teaching this particular view could be ignorant of the fact that the majority have not said this. Ignorance is bliss. Alright? Give the microphone back. Abdullah?
Another meaning could also be that you want to tell the half-truth, so you're hiding.
Oh!
Perspective.
Hi! Oh, okay. Abdullah. This leads to another question.
Could also add, yes, basically to manipulate or brainwash. And I really like your example of a rapist in who was in jail and his sheikh, I don't know, but
His teacher.
His teacher, he didn't show him all the hadiths, and he was when he told him, he was shocked.
Good. Alright. He's unpacked a whole bunch of stuff there that I wanted to look at. So, again, he mentioned some people, if they're not ignorant, which is what Yusuf said, means that the opposite of ignorance is that they know it. If you know it and not teaching it, you are concealing it. Yes or no? I know something. I'm going to conceal it from you. We're not going down the way of what Yusuf said, that I'm ignorant. I know it's there, but I'm going to hide it from you. At that point, a possible reason for me to hide that from you would be to manipulate you. Well, why else would I want to hide that from you? Anything else? Girls? Anything else? Give her the microphone.
Could it be because people can get confused and fall into the wrong side of bad innovation by accident?
Explain it in like simple layman's terms. Explain it for me.
So, for example,
Right, we'll come back to you. Right? Hold that thought. Anyway, Ibrahim.
That's all they've ever known. That's all their teachers know.
Right? That's all they've ever known, and they don't know anything else. Fair enough. Yep, I accept that. But the point is that would we be able to call those scholars, those teachers, ulama? Really? Without knowing all this other stuff? The majority view that is well documented. It comes back to, if it's not ignorance, it comes back to hiding the truth. There's only those two options. I don't see another option. Even that one comes back to, well, the teachers, do they know it or not? Well, they're in a man, they should know it, because the stuff is their books. It's on the books in Hadith commentary that they have. So they willingly have withheld. But who has the right to withhold from you? It's like you guys only being taught all bid'ah is bad and all 1,000 years worth of scholarship. I'm hiding it from you, and I know it's there, but I'm hiding it. Why? Why am I doing that? Why should I not give you the full picture? What am I scared of? I'm going to do more questions, inshallah. Alright, anybody want to add to this? What are the possible reasons that some only teach one perspective and not the majority opinion of the four madhabs? Why would you not want to teach what the majority of the madhabs have said on this topic?
I feel like this because of the reason just Quran and Hadith is so fixated on that.
On the Quran and Hadith, and these people are following the Quran and Hadith, therefore we follow the Quran and Hadith. In other words, the authority and lack of respect in the authority of these four madhabs. Alright. What are some of the harmful results that can come about when you only teach one perspective? So let's say, Zane has only been taught the bid'ah is all bad. And I come and I see you guys, Islamic Discover Islam Week, Kareem and his stalls, you guys with your apps, you guys with your phones, and I'm going crazy. Bid'ah, 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 bid'ah. And every bid'ah is what? Misguidance. Misguided, misguided, misguided. Every misguidance is what?
No.
Hellfire.
Hellfire. Hellfire, hellfire, hellfire. Anything wrong with that, by the way? Or is that normal? Is there an issue? And you say, yes, Zane, Sheikh Zane, listen, the other schools, nah, no. Every innovation. Now what? And that's in a peaceful environment. That's my reaction. Outside, it might be something else, in a different environment. Anything wrong there? What am I doing, first of all? What am I doing to you guys? Hey, just, how do you feel? Huh? Judgmental? Alright. What else? How do you guys feel? I wouldn't see you ever again in the classes, but how does that make you feel? Who said that? Belittled? Lack of respect? Or what else?
Degraded.
Degraded? Right?
Falsely accused.
Falsely, not for me, but yes, falsely accused. Any other what other harmful results can come from that?
Division.
Who said that?
Me.
Ahsan. Your name again?
Hamza.
Hamza. Division. Because what am I doing now? I'm dividing the ummah. And if I go and teach that, I'm going to produce 30 people now who are going to make 30, who are 30 people who are going to make you uncomfortable, criticized, ridiculed, degraded. And that's going to go on and continue, because it spreads. Is that a good thing? What does that do for unity? Who said that? Destroy, right? At a time when we are seeing what's happening to our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in Syria, in Sudan, in Kashmir, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and the list goes on and on. You see why this topic is actually more important than you actually think it is. What I'm teaching is unity. Because what's happened? I've opened up to you. A, I've given you the whole picture, and B, the opinion of the majority is more tolerant. Because with the majority opinion, you are not going to get judgmental on people degrading you and people ridiculing you. But you're going to get people saying, hey, bismillah, it's okay. And that's going to unify. But the other opinion, especially how it's being taught, by the way, is going to give you division. Am I right or am I wrong? You tell me. What are you seeing? Am I right or if I'm wrong, say you're wrong. Come and tell me. Am I wrong? And the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Shafi'i, you are entitled to follow that opinion. That's the ijtihad. But, and here's the problem. When that's being taught as the only way, when that minority opinion is being taught as the only opinion, the exclusive truth, the way of the Prophet and the Sahaba, and everything else is wrong, I have a problem with that. I have to spend 3 hours explaining it. No, it's not. Because we have to defend the deen. Can't remain silent. I won't. I have to defend it. Because what you are saying now, that all these ulama are people of deviance, all deviant. I'm not going to keep quiet. You like it or don't like it, not my problem. Tell the truth, akhi. This is deen. So, you follow the minority, bismillah. But understand, A, it's a minority. B, it's two scholars. And C, the majority are against you. Bismillah, I have no problem. But it's not taught that way. It's not taught that way at all. This is the correct opinion. Anybody says anything else, it's wrong and deviant. And that's the problem. Because by taking that minority opinion and teaching it in a way that is disrespectful to the majority, essentially you are calling the majority deviants. What are you saying about Imam Shafi'i? What are you saying about Imam Bayhaqi? What are you saying about the ulama? They're all deviants. What are you saying? This is the problem. Which leads me on to the homework. Hayat, read.
Despite bid'ah being widely accepted as good and bad by the four madhabs for over 1,000 years, we often hear the objections and the denial of this fact. Why? What? When? Where? Who?
Anybody familiar with this? You're smiling. Have you heard this before? What's the... Huh? I've missed one more. What was it? It's called what? The 5 who's and the 1 how. Familiar with that? Anybody come across? Medics don't know. Primary school. You got the lawyers. Have you heard of this? Journalists.
You taught this in primary school.
MashaAllah, no primary school. MashaAllah. So my question to you guys is this. This is what I'm leaving you with. This is the homework. Despite bid'ah being widely accepted as good and bad by the 4 madhabs for over 1,000 years, we often hear objections online, in WhatsApp groups, and so on and so forth, at homes, in the mosques. But why, despite the majority, why are we hearing these objections? What are these objections? When did the objections first begin? Where did they begin? Who began it? And how did this happen? That's your homework, inshallah. Go and take a screenshot, and I want you to think about it. All right? This is what's called investigative journalism, inshallah. Go and think, because I think that, for me, the answer to that question is the most important question that nobody asks. If the majority have been doing this, you go online, you won't find this online until like the 6th page. Mosques up and down the country are saying something else. Books are saying something else. Everyone, majority of people are saying something else. But if that's not historically true, how did that happen? Who began that? Why did they do that? Where did they do that? And how did this occur? And that's your homework. Inshallah. Bismillah. Jazakumullah khair. And Kareem's not here again. But next week's class is Aqidah. What is Aqidah? Next week, inshallah. Alright. Bismillah. Forgive me for taking me so long.